Welcome to Life
on
Life's
Terms
with your host, Justin.
and Chelsey.
Today's topics, after our long-awaited one-episode holiday.
I feel like I've been gone forever.
Well, you have been.
Yeah.
Not physically, but we're going to talk about the big news of what we've changed on the show and the complete outline. It's a whole overhaul. Then we're going to talk about Chelsey's blog this week on this Friday show.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about how we come to be in recovery. And then we're going to talk about shitty positions that we went through in active recovery.
Yeah, we are.
So, catch up. I guess we were supposed to do more formal meetings and such about how we were changing the show.
Yeah, but then, life happens and you get way too fucking busy.
And then we did it in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
literally. Right before the show. We solidified everything.
Yeah. Jam-packed it all together.
So no more topics.
Nope. See ya.
Yeah, we're going to go back to the old format. I think Kenny and I previously talked about topics being a good thing and that it would help us. It would help us in whatever capacity it was supposed to help us in. For you and I, it doesn't seem to be working out.
Nope. I disagree with that. With you guys thinking it was a better choice. I do not like it.
I think for Kenny and I, the structure that we had, it did work for the first little while. We always knew that it was going to be a challenge to find people to come in and interview based on topics.
Absolutely.
So
maybe depending on the topic. I don't know.
Yeah. It really does depend. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to pick people every week, different people throughout the week, throughout the month to come on the show and talk to us. And I think we're going to have some reoccurring guests come back on that probably wouldn't have fit into the upcoming topics.
Yeah.
That was one of my thoughts, So we're going to have some other guests come back on the show, which is great. And the blogs for Friday are open.
Open to whatever we feel like talking about.
Yeah, that's the other big change. Listeners, though, you guys can always go to our website and drop us a line. Chelsea's now hooked up with her email.
Yeah.
You saw that, right? So if the comments come in, you see them too now. It's not just me. So when the comments come in from the listeners, our wonderful, beautiful listeners, you get that too. So newsflash, Chelsey just found that out now.
Yeah. Surprise. He's just surprising me with all sorts of shit today.
So if you guys want us to hit a topic or tackle something, we're more than open to do that and write a blog about it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Just drop us a line at www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com. You can become a subscriber right then and there, right at the beginning. And bada boom, bada bing, you can get a hold of us like right then and there. And then we also have basically like a WhatsApp on the website. So you can get a hold of Chelsey and I at any given time. And hopefully eventually what we'll do is Chelsey and I will trade off where we'll actually be manning that text machine on the website. So, we'll start scheduling probably not this month, but next month. Yeah. Times when people can actually get a hold of us. Yeah. Like in real time.
It's a good plan. I like that.
Like in real time, right? And then we'll be there to help people. Whether that's on Facebook, but it'll probably be on the website because that's probably the easiest place to do it is on the website. We paid for that shit, yo.
Yeah.
So your blog this Friday.
Yeah, it seems Justin just informed me that I had to pick a topic right now.
Yeah.
He does not care that I hate surprises like this. I'm going to talk about knitting. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't. No, okay, no knitting.
Shocker, fucking surprise.
I'll save that for a different day. No. Okay.
Cross stitch. Anybody stitching, bitch?
I think just because of who I'm going to be coming in or who's going to be coming into the show next week, I'm not going to say who. I'll leave it a surprise.
Yeah.
But I do want to write a little bit about diet and nutrition. And I know we had an entire month about that, but I want to come at it from a different approach because I've had... Okay, let me just put it this way. So I have come to a conclusion after figuring out my daughter's diet, what is causing her to have crazy outbreaks of eczema. And I've narrowed it down to gluten. And I have had, even her dad was like, oh my God, are we going to go gluten-free here? Are we going on that trend? So I kind of want to discuss about how there are people who do this, quote, trend, no gluten in their diets or dairy-free just for the hell of it. And then how there's people who actually need it. Because I have a whole bunch of family members who have celiac disease, which means that they actually cannot have gluten. It makes them very sick.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that aren't aware of that's an actual medical condition.
Yeah.
And then there's so many people who just like my daughter's dad's reaction to it. He was like, oh my gosh, almost rolling his eyes like, you don't want our daughter to eat gluten just because that's what other people are doing. I was like, no, just try it. And I actually did trial and error. And when she eats a ton of gluten, her skin's terrible.
Even for myself, I went gluten-free pasta. I talked about that in the diet nutrition.
Yeah.
And it's life-changing. Like I'm not as sore. I don't swell as bad as I used to.
Yeah.
My muscle stiffness is not there. Stuff like that. Just recently, I also started taking niacin.
Okay. Which is
B3 supplement.
Oh, right. Okay.
Life-changing for energy.
Yeah, those bees make a difference.
Life-changing. And the focus that niacin has given me is unreal. It's unreal how night and day of a change that is. And then even though it's summer, but I'm Caucasian, so probably always have a vitamin D12 deficiency. I'm taking that as well.
Yeah.
I do not really agree with the school of a multivitamin.
I strongly disagree with it.
And so my whole thought about a multivitamin is I would rather get the vitamins from a natural source if I can.
Yes.
And then the vitamins that I can't get from a natural source, I will supplement. So, and that's been trial and error.
Yeah.
We got our blood work done, Kenny and I, way back when. And that will tell you a lot too about your vitamin deficiencies. So I would suggest anybody going to go get that done as well. I would look into that for your blog.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
How many people actually do that? Go and get their blood taken and then take supplements.
Yeah.
Right?
Instead of guessing.
Yeah, they just, fuck it, I'll grab some niacin.
Believe it or not,
that Justin fucker said niacin was great. I'm gonna. What,
I need it too.
300 milligrams, 500 milligrams. What am I taking? Right? Yeah. That's no. You got to.
I mean, even a doctor can just take a guess at what your body may need without doing the blood work, and of course, most people just listen to their doctor and take it, right?
But I think a lot of times too, I even know for myself, I didn't know what was making me deficient. Do you see what I'm saying? I didn't know that energy was linked to the B vitamins. So you could say, your doctor's like, well, what's your energy like? Well,
it can be linked to iron too, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
And then things I think some people aren't as in tuned to what's going on with their body. So for them to go to a doctor and say, well, this is what's going on, ugats.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
So even if the doctor's sitting there saying, well, do you feel this way or do you feel this way? And it's like, I never even thought of that. You know what I mean? So that's where I think the shot in the barrel is the blood work, because blood work can't lie.
Yeah.
It's saying what's in your body and what's not in your body.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, right? So I think that's I think that's a big thing, that especially people who come into early recovery, you have to omega-3 fatty acids, man. Your brain is fucked and you got to change that shit.
I take a full spectrum omega, so there's 3, 5, 6, 7, 9 maybe, all in one. Yeah, every day.
And it's after about 5 years, they say I can say when I did that neurology thing, my brain is healed.
Yeah, I'm seeing my neurologist next month, and I kind of want to ask him to send me for another scan. He sent me for scans a couple of years ago, and that was in regards to my epilepsy. And he said that there's no point in redoing a scan if my other tests are working fine. But I'm just curious what my brain looks like, because he told me flat out when I had my first scan, he's like, I'm a little concerned with, he said he could tell I was a alcoholic and a drug user just by my brain. One scan. He's like, yeah, there's you can see the damage.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's pretty amazing with the brain is, like I said, from what I've been told and what I went through, it takes 5 years and it completely heals itself. Because the brain is a muscle, so it's continuously regenerating, right? The big things that don't change is the DNA that you did. There's damage to your telomeres.
Yes, yeah.
That will never really heal itself fully, right? Like when a woman has a baby, it's such a traumatic genetic shock to the body that some women after giving birth didn't have, like, they have allergies that they never had before.
Oh yeah, it can completely change you.
Well, exactly, and it does. It's supposed to, right? And if you actually look at the DNA line, you'll see that. Like, you'll see that change in the DNA in the line. And you'll also see it in the telomeres, right, of somebody's body. Like, you can tell that this person's had a baby and this one hasn't.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas with addicts, it's the same thing. You can tell the detriment of what has happened to the body. Fighters are the same thing. You'll see fighters, you can tell when they cut weight right and when they didn't cut weight right.
Yeah.
Because that's huge on the body to draw back that much water and dehydrate yourself for that length of time.
Right.
It's brutal on your body. Like, it's brutal.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and diet and nutrition, when it comes to those kinds of things, most fighters are really good at it, but then you get those crazy fucking fighters like Conor McGregor's and shit, or like John Bone Jones, where they're just cowboys and they do a bunch of coke and they fucking drink all the time. And they're like Mike Tyson in his prime. He was the same way as just wild cowboy. They take fairly good care of themselves, but they're abusing a body that they worked so hard for, and they're just pissing it away. Right. And it's really strange when, you see somebody put that much work into their skill and their talent, and then, piss it away on a weekend from drinking and drugging. Like, it's really fucked up to watch that.
Wreck your body a hell of a lot faster than you do building it up.
But at the same time, like, you'll see, like, I think Mike Tyson confessed that when he fought Buster Douglas, the reason why he lost was because he was coked out.
Oh, really?
He's like, every time he went into the ring, he had smoked a joint before. Mike Tyson also had asthma. Severe case of asthma. That's why fights never lasted longer than 2 rounds. He couldn't do it. Yeah. Like, he didn't have the stamina to do it. So he'd have to get in there in the first round or 2 or 3 and just fuck your world up in order to be able to make that happen. Right? So, I mean, there's a wide spectrum, I think, when it comes to diet and nutrition. We definitely figured that out.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
In that month. Like, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to look at. Yeah.
Everyone's unique too, right? Everybody's body's needs are different.
And so I guess those things that we were saying, should we go back to this topic when we used to do the wrap-up shows? We may just want to revisit those periodically as an individual. Yeah. And then bite it off that way. Because that's probably a lot smarter than just leaving them, because they were obviously good topics.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we'll probably tackle it that way as well.
Yeah, no, I like that for sure. They shouldn't be completely disregarded, right?
Yeah. I mean, we put a bunch of work into them. So, and the listeners obviously liked them. They were listening to it. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we'll probably do it that way in the future. So, but your diet, nutrition, your blog, you're going to go, just to recap, you're going into, what's the specific again?
Just specifically about perhaps the ignorance. See, again, you just put me on the spot. The ignorance of these so-called trends compared to the reality of what people's bodies may or may not need. Okay, remember how we even talked about back in the nutrition month, What the Health? Is that what the show was called? Yeah, even that show had made me think that dairy was absolutely the worst thing for you. And then I thought I was naive and ignorant. And then I've been doing more research since then, and I keep being told even by nutritionists that it's not good for you. And so these are kind of things I've been running by people to get their opinions. And like I said, experimenting with my own daughter's diet. And it has become apparent some things that are okay in her diet and some things that aren't. So I just want to kind of just talk about individuality of nutrition.
Okay. I'll also put you on this goose chase a little bit.
Do it.
One of the things that I learned through that month was to look at cultures that do not have the kind of information that we have.
Okay.
And then look at their diet and then look at their health.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not really being pushed by as a consumer because they don't have the economic validity of being a consumer. Right? Like It's just not there. So they eat whatever they eat in order to survive. And what's their obese rate? What's this? What's that? You know what I mean? That's almost the question you want to ask when you're looking at those. The challenge in itself is to find a place that's so remote that doesn't have. I mean, you could look at the people like the northern communities that we have here in Canada. They eat no vegetables. It's all fat, and a lot of those people aren't massively obese. They're a little bit heavy, but they're not grossly obese. You know what I mean? So it's, and like you said, the individuality is a great barometer. But I think the interjection in that barometer that needs to be in place is the culture around that. Yeah. Because if we go to China, they eat anything and everything, and they have the lowest obese rate in the world. Yeah. Go to India, it's definitely the same thing. Yeah. Right? So like, what are they doing differently next to us? You go to France. This is pretty amazing in France and Italy. Most people, they have a low obesity rate too. And the reason why their obesity rate is so low in France is because they walk everywhere. Oh,
everywhere.
Right?
I was gonna say, don't they eat a lot of pasta? That's
Italy.
Oh, Italy.
Right?
Yeah.
But see, their pasta is different than ours. It's not the same. Look into it. You'll see. Yeah. It's not the same. So it's almost like when I looked into that diet and nutrition month, what it almost seemed, and it seemed so conspiratorial, was like these mass like Monsantos and bullshit. They just wanted to kill us North Americans. And us North Americans are so susceptible to this, that, and the other thing because we're just basically a consumer product. We just consume and spend because our economy dictates that we can do that. It's like feeding fucking cows to the slaughter. Like that's what it feels like. You know, like the information where there's so much disinformation about what's going on out there, you don't know what the hell's real. And the only thing that you can really do is simulate from some sort of culture that doesn't even have any of that information and see how they're getting along. Yeah. And then try to figure it out that way. Right? Like there's so many different ways of deducing what's right and what's not right that when you finally get to a place of how do I figure out my individuality in health and nutrition, it's a fucking huge juggernaut.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it really is. So individual diet. Okay. I got it written down.
With all sorts of factors involved.
Yeah. I'll even put that with factors. Yeah. With factors.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's today's blog.
Yep.
Awesome. So if you haven't read it, go read it. Go read it.
Go read it.
Go read it. Next segment of the show is how we came to be in recovery. So I'm going to kick off with how this happened for me. So basically what this is if anybody's out there in recovery, which I'm sure there's a bunch of you fuckers out there, you sick fucks. It's what happened, what it was like, and where we're at today. I feel like this has to happen again. Every so often, just because there's new listeners.
Oh yeah, totally.
So if you've already listened to this,
too bad.
Chelsea's going to be up in probably about 15 minutes. So just fast forward. Probably be around like 40 minutes in. So here we go. What happened was it sucked, right? Using drugs and alcohol leads me to one place, and that's jail. Last week, I did the episode. So I'll say this. I did that episode about going to jail and what that was like. I have been suffering tremendously from PTSD over the last 2 weeks. It's been fucking rough.
You could hear it in your voice in that episode.
It was
Definitely.
it was fucking tough, man. Like afterwards, I would be standing in my kitchen, and I'm telling my partner to open the window because I need to feel the breeze. Like I feel claustrophobic and shit.
Wow.
It was tough, man. Like the last 2 weeks were really, really tough. And that's what happens when I do drugs and alcohol. When I do drugs and alcohol, I will always go to jail. It just seems to be the math. You know, one follows to the other. And the physical things that happen are like, I'll wake up in Vancouver on the downtown east side, not knowing how I got there. I'll wake up in Vancouver in Winnipeg in a fucking train station and not know how I got on the train.
Holy.
Like shit, like I black out for long periods of time. The DTs in the morning would get so bad that I would have to slam 2 Colt 45s like right away just to stop the shakes. And then from there I would kick off the first 60 of the day. So I was a 260 a day drinker at the end of my addiction. And I would do about an ounce of Coke every day just to keep myself going. And if I was going on a long run of air quotes work, I would probably I would mix like meth with my Coke in order to keep myself up for days upon days upon days. It was more economical to do that than a bunch of blow.
Yeah.
So that's where my using that's what my using was like. I remember a little bit when I was in the Remand Center, the guards betting on if I was going to make it through the night, and they refused to call the nurse as I was going through withdrawals of alcohol.
Can they do that?
I don't understand. They don't
so
give
a
fuck, man. They don't give a fuck.
It's so fucked up.
I was knocking myself in and out of consciousness from the shaking as I was hitting the ground.
I believe it.
Like it was horrible. Just horrible, right? And I fight everybody when I'm drinking. I'm very rarely a happy drunk, especially in the end. I turn real fast.
Really? See, knowing you as you are now, I just can't picture you being an angry person wanting to scrap.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, I can't picture that.
Yeah, I was not. Yeah. So that put me in a lot of predicament. And being able to fight, I'm not saying I won every fight, but I would hurt people to a real bad point, or I would be the guy. I would do very physically violent things to people when I was drinking. I was a very vengeful person when I was drinking and using drugs.
Right.
You wronged me, I wronged your entire family.
Okay.
You know, that kind of a mentality, which didn't serve me or anybody well. And I talked about this in the other episode. Being in jail is really where my first 8 or 9 months came of abstinence. I wasn't really sober. There's a huge difference between abstinence and sobriety. Abstinence means you're just not using, and you're probably a dry drunk or a dry alcoholic. And I hate to put it to you this way, but if you are one of those people who aren't in active recovery, I don't give a shit if it's an AA meeting, a CA meeting, or just any meeting with anybody. If you're not participating in those things, you're probably a dry addict. And the way how you know that is people will say things to you like, just fucking have a drink already.
Yeah.
When you hear people saying that to you,
maybe you should go back to drinking
or go into real recovery. You know, the only, like, I've been known as a sponsor to buy my first drink, like buy the first drink for my sponsee, because they were just being a dry drunk. And I said, look, I would rather you relapse now and come back sooner than you not.
Prolong it.
Right?
Prolong the inevitable.
You're just, like I said, it's one thing to do amends about your drinking. It's another thing to do amends about being sober. That's a really shitty amends to have to make to people. Your first amends are easy easier because, you know, you can't use your drinking as an excuse. It's not. But for a large portion of it, you don't really remember. The worst is when you have to make amends and you were sober. We're not perfect. And we have to do that shit all of the time. And it's way more difficult doing an amends sober, in a sober state of mind, than it is to say to somebody, yeah, you know, when I was drunk, I really wronged you.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Of course you
Right?
did.
Yeah.
Right?
I was fucked up. That's why I did it. Yeah.
Exactly. But see, that's not an excuse either.
No.
You are responsible. So even back to that, I went to a treatment center here in the Edmonton area that I waited some time to get into. And I didn't really expand upon this. Like, I'm not going to talk too much about jail because I just did an episode last week about it, or a couple of weeks ago now. I'll talk more about treatment itself. So what treatment really taught me was to accept who I was, right? There's a big part of it. And the only person who really has to accept anybody is me. And the kind of things that I was accepting was somebody who could do serious physical harm to somebody on more than one occasion. And that was difficult.
Yeah.
I had to accept that I was a person in an active addiction that is capable of depriving my community in a capacity that, unlike anybody else. I was capable of perpetuating the disease of addiction. I was capable of doing very horrific things in the sight and the guise of getting another drug into me and another bottle into me. I had to accept that. But the way out of that acceptance in something that was so difficult was I also had to accept that I was the one who had the power to change.
Yes.
So as much as I was responsible for who I was more responsible, and I had to accept that I had the ability to change. And once I saw that stuff in recovery, it really changed my mind. Like that really, it was almost like a light bulb went on. And I was like, I don't have to live that way that I was living before. It's not my destiny. It does not have to be that. And they kept talking about this bullshit called aftercare. You need aftercare and recovery is what they kept saying to me. And I couldn't figure out what the fuck aftercare was because I was living in a provincial treatment center, which means like the Alberta government runs it.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't directly say to me, you need to go to AA meetings when you leave here. They were just saying, you need an aftercare program.
Right.
And they wouldn't tell you what that aftercare program was. That aftercare program was a fucking A meeting to save your ass. Like, that's what it was. And so I went to Cocaine Anonymous in the treatment center because they had in-house meetings every week or so. And then what ended up happening was there is this thing called H&I, which was hospitals and institutions, which allowed people from the outside of the treatment center who were participating in a fellowship to come into the treatment center to talk about what their fellowship is all about. And that's where my sponsor was. He was not my sponsor in the beginning, but that's where I met him. And so he came in and he did his little talk just like I'm doing now. And the following weekend we were allowed out into society, like the community. And I went to my first CA meeting. I walked down these stairs into this fucking dingy basement, just smelled like shit. It's fucking brutal. And who did I see there? That guy. You know, he's been on the show, Larry.
Yeah, Larry.
You know, he was sitting there, and I felt familiar with that. He came up to me, shook my hand, and all this stuff. And that first meeting that I was in, I actually cried in that meeting. It was so difficult. It was somebody's birthday, and it was difficult to accept that I really needed those people as much as I didn't want to need them.
Right.
And there was some other stuff that I was going through at that moment about how there's a lot of death within my active addiction, and there's a lot of people who were probably better people than I was that never made it into recovery, and I had a lot of guilt about that.
Yeah.
And carried that for a long time. And so I remember being in that meeting, and then actually prior to that, me and this guy that I was in the treatment center with, we met his pregnant girlfriend at a bar.
Oh.
Prior to the meeting. And I realized, and there was free Jaeger shots It was like a pub style bar.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
We were actually going for the food, thought that we could it's not going to bother us.
Yeah,
It bothered us a
right.
lot.
Yeah,
It bothered us a
yeah.
lot. I realized that right then and there, I have some serious issues. Like I really recognized it then. Like I'm a fucking alcoholic. I'm a piece of shit. That's really what I thought.
Yeah.
And then I got to that meeting. Like I said, I bawled, got back to my treatment center, stayed in that treatment center, and I had nowhere to go, man. Like nowhere to go. My counselor moved hell and high water to get me into a halfway house after. Like he fucking jumped through hoops. Like you have no idea to get me in that place because he really believed that I was going to stay sober.
Yeah.
And I got to that halfway house and things didn't work out very well in early recovery in that facility, only because I was very fortunate that I could walk into a career right away in early recovery. So I went right back into geomatics right away. It was what I knew, and I knew it would make me a lot of money and I could pay, and I had lawyers' bills up the fucking ass. I think the biggest kicker in my early recovery that really sucked was I had the 20-ton fucking piano and elephant always hanging over my head called 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
Because that's what they wanted out of me for the crimes that air quotes I committed, and the ones that I actually pled out to, because those were the ones that I was actually guilty for. It was way different in time.
Okay.
So I ended up not doing the 14 years, but that was over my head for almost like a large portion of my recovery.
Oh, I bet.
Right. So that kind of stuff really you could think about what happened in jail yesterday, or you can think about what's going to happen in trial tomorrow. But I had to recognize here and now I'm free, and I needed to live for the moment. And you always hear people talk about that in recovery, but it's so important that you do.
Yeah.
Because people, and I've always said this too, people who don't have gratitude are probably going to lose their recovery. If you're not grateful for what's going on in your life today, then you probably forgot how shitty it was to get into recovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a huge deal, and you really have to do that. So here I was in this halfway house, and I got kicked out of the halfway house because basically they put me on like dishes detail, and I was an engineer. I was a surveyor for construction companies, and my biggest money-making time of the year is the summertime. And I was like, I'm not telling my client that I have to leave the site at 5:00 in the fucking evening to go and like wash dishes for my halfway house, because like our hours in the summertime are from 5:30 in the morning to almost 10 o'clock at night when the sun's up here in northern Alberta.
Yeah.
Like you work the entire time. So that was a real issue. And some other stuff had happened, and I was asked to leave. And the
halfway house.
Yeah, I was asked to leave the halfway house. And then, so the issue about that was I was actually sentenced to that halfway house. And I wasn't actually allowed to leave, and they kicked me out. So I was really afraid I was going to go back to jail.
Oh, yeah.
And that ended up not happening, so God or odd, however that works, right? And then I ended up staying with one of the guys who was in that halfway house with me as a roommate afterwards, and we stayed in some basement place. I think the biggest thing that I really fucked up in early recovery was I didn't stay single. That was a huge, huge problem, and I think you'll hear that again and again and again from people who have recovery.
Oh, yeah.
And the ongoing joke is they always tell you the suggestion about staying single.
For a whole year.
For a whole year. But nobody knows if it works because nobody's actually fucking done it, which is probably pretty real, right? Yeah. I remember also in active recovery, like, and I said this a little while ago. I don't know if I ever confessed this on the podcast, but I'll say it here. There were people who would like shit on you. You know, you should do this and you should do that and all this stuff. And then fucking 2 weeks later, they're sitting in that same Nooner meeting that I'm sitting in. and they fucking relapsed. I'm like, yes, see that, motherfucker, right? I mean, it's a whole...
Tell me what to do.
Yeah, fuck you. Look at you, relapsing Joe over there.
Yeah.
Fucking Prince of Relapse. Fuck off, you know?
Yeah.
Suck some dick. Fuck you. That's what you did for that Coke, didn't you, you fucking degenerate fucker, right? And these are like, that's the real in your head, right?
Yeah.
Right? And it was very, very unfortunate that I was like that. Like my thinking was still there. It was like that in the beginning. And so the first guy that I asked to be my sponsor basically said, no, I don't like you and I won't give you the time of day. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then there was this other fella. He took me out for Chinese food. So that my fellowship, we all go out for Chinese food after the Saturday nooner. So we were at this place called All Happy here. No, it wasn't. It was Pegalac. That's where we were. Pegalac. Shout out to Pegalac. And I didn't have, like, this was right before I got my job. So I'm still in the halfway house. And I didn't have fucking 2 dimes, man. And I'm going to this fucking thing. And they're like, what do you want? I'm like, tea. Because it's free. Right? And this guy looks at me and goes, you fucking order whatever you want. Like, don't worry about it. The table's going to pick it up. Just fucking eat, you know? Yeah. And so I ordered whatever I wanted. And this guy's like, you want to ride home? I was like, sure. So we're driving, we're talking. He's a big Italian dude, right? Like, he's a fucking wop. And he pulls up to my halfway house, and I'm ready to jump out. He goes, I got a question for you. So what's that? And he says, do you love your mother? I said, yeah. He goes, do you respect her? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, it'd be an honor to take you through your first set of steps. Would you like to work with me? And I was in so much shock because I needed a sponsor bad. And here this guy is, and he goes, the big book tells me that I'm supposed to ask as a sponsor. It's not up to you to have to ask us. I don't agree with that in this fellowship. And that was pretty wild. And I said, yeah, man, like any time, you know, let's do this. And he got me through my first set of steps. And every time my sober birthday comes up, I message him and I'm like, thank you for however many years I have on that day. Right. And he probably saved my life because there was, at that point, I probably was on relapse road. You know, like I said, I was in that mind frame where I was like, fuck you, you fucking prick, right?
For sure.
Like I was there and I was getting resentful. And he definitely changed the perspective. And then after that, I ended up working with Larry. And we did another set of steps, and Larry and I have done a bunch of bullshit. So what's it like now in active recovery? I mean, it's amazing. I don't talk about my recovery with my mom anymore. That's not a subject of our conversation. Subject of our conversation is like, instead of like, so my mom comes and visits me sometimes out here, or I go visit her or whatever. And we're like, let's stop doing that. Get passports and start going to like Cuba.
That's a good idea.
Fuck it. You know, that's where we're going to go. Right? Or we'll go to Nepal, or we'll go to Italy, or we'll go to wherever. And let's do it that way instead of the way that we're doing it now. Because it's costing us just as much within our country, like within Canada, to do it as opposed to like going somewhere else. Right? Yeah. So that's what we kind of figured is what we're going to do. So those are the context of those conversations. Do I still go to meetings today? 100%. I don't go as often as I used to. I don't feel the need or the necessity to do that. I feel recovered. I don't feel as if I'm in recovery anymore. I go through the process of recovery, such as I pray in the morning, I do my inventory at night, and I give thanks to God and make sure my gratitude is forward, and I'm willing to help anybody who wants the help to become sober. You know, I'm in contact with my sponsor. I do the maintenance things that are necessary in order to have a wonderful life in sobriety. Am I as involved with my fellowship today as I once was? Probably not. But I think there comes a point in time where you have to expand and go and be around people who are, air quotes, normies. You know, you can't live in a microcosm of a bunch of addicts. It's great in the beginning, and they're the most forgiving people in the world. And I've said this before on the podcast where, you know, you can't go up to a normal person and say, so I did this thing called denial. Didn't even know I lied, and I kind of lied to you yesterday. Normal people are going to be like, what's your number? And you're fucking gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Addicts are like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Want to go for coffee?
Yeah.
And that's like, so it allows you a microcosm of a forgiving social group. It's not so stable, but it's very forgiving, you know? And my first sponsor said to me, he goes, you know, we don't kick the wounded here, but your credibility's for shit. And so on that token, I'm a first-time kicker and I never relapsed. And God willing, I don't, you know? So life is better today than it's ever been. And the only thing that I can tell you as a lifesaver is those steps in whatever capacity you do them. So yeah, if you're looking for sobriety, I would strongly suggest go to your next meeting, find a sponsor, and get through a set of steps. They can't fuck you up more than you're already fucked up.
Isn't that true?
That's true. Like that's where it's at. So it's your turn.
All right, my turn. Hey, I guess I've never really gone too much into detail. I mean, I've said some of the fucked up shit I've done, but never talked from the beginning.
Well, the way how I've always broken it down is talk about like the last month of your active use, because that's probably
fucked up one.
Well, that's the catalyst to get you into recovery.
Yeah.
Right. So start from there.
Well, okay. Well, I'll just say first, in a nutshell, I was your stereotypical party girl for sure. I partied every weekend.
Were you a bar star?
No, I was about to say I was never a bar star though, and I think the reason for that was because I started drinking at such a young age, and I went to so many house parties that I quickly learned it's a hell of a lot cheaper to drink at a house than go to a bar. I think when I finally turned 18, because I didn't even turn 18 until after high school, and I was maybe a bar star for 2 months, and I just didn't go. I was more of like a go to the pub, order wings as an excuse just to go and get drunk, or go watch a hockey game at a pub, really just to go get drunk, right? And then, so I was like that for a long time. My family members seen it. I was the black sheep of the family. I was called a party or whatever. And then I can't even pinpoint the time where it started to be out of control. And by that, I mean to the point where I started missing work, right? Because I mean, I was an alcoholic since fucking 14, whatever, since the time I first drank. But
let me ask you this, and a lot of us identify with this. You ever feel like when you started drinking, it was like you had arrived?
Yes. Yeah.
If you read the big book, in the big book, that's exactly what Bill says. I've arrived.
Yeah. You know, I've read the first part of the big book. I remember Bill.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Anyways, I won't interrupt.
No, that's fine. I like your input. Yeah, actually it's funny you say that, because I was thinking the other day, the very first time I drank, I instantly was like, I love alcohol. Like that feeling, right? Anyway, so yeah, I was always, it was a problem for me. I was just in denial. I'm not quite sure when that switch flipped for me where I started missing work. Of course, it was always Mondays, right? And then, yeah, I'll go, I can't go to the last month before treatment, because I did have a period where I was 8 months sober.
Yeah.
Right. Oh no, I was abstaining, like you had mentioned.
Does abstinence though? Does that make my definition, air quotes, definition of abstinence? Do you recognize it in your first 8 months? That's really what you were doing? You weren't in recovery? Like now looking back, oh my God, yeah, I was the most miserable person I've ever been. Yeah. And I was 100% lost and alone, feeling like that is the key. I was alone, lost, and miserable, so angry. And how I got there, I'm trying to think how much detail I want to say here. You're going to give it all.
Yeah, I am.
You're giving it all.
Okay. You guys ready for this shocker? Okay, so, well, first, sadly, I was suicidal. I'll just go to that night. I took a ton of pills, drank probably a whole 2-6, got in the bathtub. I was just depressed of the fact that I was an alcoholic. And at the time, I remember thinking that, like, I was one in a million being an alcoholic. Like, I didn't realize there were so many people out there that had this problem. I really did. I know, right?
So conceited. It's all just me.
I was like, the thought is just outrageous, right? But nobody in my family had this problem that I had. So I was like, what the fuck's wrong with me?
Yeah,
and why can't I just stop drinking? Why the fuck do I get these shakes and these hallucinations when I don't drink? Like, I was so ignorant to it. Listen to him laughing at me.
Oh my God.
No, I really was that fucking lost. I really didn't have a fucking clue what was going on. Anyways.
Why hallucinate? Isn't that normal? Like,
oh my God. So I was like, that, get a load of this guy. Good thing I'm not sensitive, hey? Anyways, I go into the bathtub. I decided to slip both my arms from wrist to elbow. Wanted to die. I don't remember what happened then. I did lose consciousness. And then one of my roommates at the time, came home and found me. The next thing I remember is being in bed, bandaged up with, I was very confused, had a splitting headache. Wasn't sure what was going on. And there was just this very sad face looking at me. And it was the person who pulled me out of the tub. Fast forward a couple of months later, him and I got married.
oh my God.
Yeah. Okay. So we knew each other for years. This was our second time being roommates. And I guess I latched to him for dear life, really. I thought I survived for whatever reason. And again, remember, I still continued drinking every single day. I was fucked up. I was. Mm-hmm. And I tried to work, but then I realized I couldn't because I just couldn't get through a day without alcohol, and I couldn't work intoxicated, obviously. So I was open with my boss and about my depressive state, and I took some time off, and then I just couldn't go back. And I thought that this is how ridiculous my brain was working at the time. I cared for this person and he cared for me. And I was also just a fucking alcoholic who thought that maybe if I accept this love he was presenting for me and I got married, maybe I could be fucking normal.
That's called insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the insidiousness
so I was insane.
of the disease.
Yeah. Anyways, we had a JP come to the house. I got married in my living room. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen you laugh this hard. And I don't remember it.
Did you throw the flowers?
I don't know. I'd have to ask. I think my best friend was there. My grandma and grandpa were there. Like, they see me in the state.
Holy
His
fuck.
parents were there, who I had just met maybe prior to that. Shut up. And then
Holy fuck.
my mom and my auntie.
Oh, that's a good one.
And okay, so I remember getting my hair done in the morning. My best friend and I went to the salon and got my hair done. And I remember getting back, and I had been holding off on drinking liquor. So I had the shakes by the time I got home. And I was like, I need a drink. But okay, I had a very tall glass, and it filled it about 3/4 full of vodka.
Did you have a specific glass? Like a glass that you'd always go to?
All my glasses were the same.
So I had a specific glass. Like, it was like my go-to glass. I knew exactly how much booze, all of that. Like it was my glass.
Oh, no. I had a set of glasses that all looked the same. So.
Well, there you go. Anyways,
3/4 full, and topped it off with a little bit of water. And I remember my mom being like, oh, I should probably say that I had this is prior to all of this.
How the fuck did you even convince people that this was a good idea?
Nobody thought it was a good idea, but they weren't going to say that to my face. Actually, I won't say nobody. I think my mom, because she was in a state of denial as well, was hoping the same thing. Maybe this will fucking set her straight. Yeah. So anyways, I should mention that prior to this, I had seizures and wound up in the hospital from trying to stop drinking cold turkey.
You have epilepsy, though.
Yes, but these were strictly DT seizures, right? Yeah. So they had put me in the hospital, and my excuse as to keep drinking was, well, I can't have a seizure on my wedding day because my mom was watching me pour this glass, and it's like 11 in the morning or 10 in the morning, and I'm like, whatever my fucking excuse was, well, I don't want to have a seizure. So I went upstairs, and I pounded that glass, so I went to instantly blackout drunk. to this day, I'm now over 2 years since I had a drop of liquor. I do not remember getting married. I do not remember saying my vows. I don't remember saying I do. I don't remember the you may now kiss the bride. I don't remember anything. But apparently I signed a paper and got married. And then I went to bed and left everybody in the house because I was fucking loaded. I woke up the next day and I was like, what time is it? What day is it? What happened? Oh, we're married?
Just fucking lit.
Yeah. And then, and apparently I was just like a sloppy mess. My friend was like, I don't even know how legally you were married. Like, it was very obvious that I was fucked up. But whatever. It happened. And I think it was the following weekend that I went to detox for my first time.
There's honeymoon.
Yeah, I know. People at detox were like, why wouldn't you come to detox after your honeymoon so you could get loaded on your honeymoon? Yeah. I was like, well, we'll save. Yeah. I was like, we'll save more money if I'm not drinking. Anyways. So
oh my God.
So
oh fuck.
Yeah, I went to detox and it was fucking terrible. If you've never been to detox, if you need to go because it's worth it. But if you've been through detox, you know how terrible those first few days are. It fucking sucks.
So it wasn't the facility, it was what you were going through.
No. I loved you're surrounded by people who are going through what you're going through. And you're surrounded by really caring doctors and nurses and whatever. Staff. Yeah. The staff's amazing. It's the process of what has to happen in your body before it can start to heal that just sucked. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. So I went to detox, got out, and then I was like, what the fuck? I'm fucking married. And this is nothing against shout out to Richard. He does listen to the show. I was so fucking lost because I'd been a drunk and intoxicated for so fucking long and doing drugs for so long that I didn't have an identity at all. I was suddenly a married person and I felt alone and I wasn't going to meetings. And no, I went to a couple and then I was fucking angry and I had so much resentment towards my family and towards Richard for allowing me to be married in the state that I was in. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with all of you? Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's a huge thing that you want to have done properly and you can't erase it, right?
You're going to hate what I'm going to say.
What?
You were responsible for the first drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like in all honesty.
No, I know it's not their fault at all. Obviously, they could have told me, "No, you're making a mistake," and I wouldn't have listened.
Well,
right? I would have said,
they were
"Fuck
probably telling you that kind of like subtly all the way through.
My dad wasn't even that subtle. I told my dad that we were going to get married, and my dad was like, "You know that's not going to fix anything that's wrong with you, right?" I love my dad for his honesty. He's always just like, whatever. He just shook his head and he thought it was the dumbest fucking thing ever. But it happened. There I was, angry, resentful, sober but not sober, just resentful.
So here you are, abstinent, hating the world.
The world was just a terrible place in my mind. And then finally one day I was like, I want a divorce. Like, we never should have fucking got married. I was just angry, and I thought that was the solution to all my problems.
The divorce.
Yeah. Because then I thought I needed to start my sobriety my way, and being a wife that I didn't want to be was not the right way. And instead of going to meetings or whatever, seeing a psychologist, a psychiatrist, I started hanging out with people that I knew partied. Mm-hmm. And they were all amazed that I wasn't a partier. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I explained to them that I can't drink.
But I can do coke.
But I can do coke is exactly what I said to them. Exactly what I said to them. This is a lesson to all you listeners who may be feeling what I felt in that moment. If you were just an alcoholic, that does not mean that you can just do drugs. So, in my opinion.
So I for a long time was able to identify that I was a drug addict, but I wasn't an alcoholic because my dad's an alcoholic, right? He beats women and whatever. And so I'm not that well.
Yeah.
Hold up.
Yeah. So I tried to get away with that. I tried to get away with just doing some blow. And then finally one night, I don't know, I was like too high. And, to balance it out, you got to throw some alcohol in there.
Yeah.
And I was just too high and I fucking hated the feeling. And then they're like, well, you all ready to blow, like you might as well just have a drink. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, you're right.
Here's a beer.
Whoopsie, there went Chelsey, like, I don't know, 5 days straight. That went on for a couple weekends in a row. And then finally I called my sister. I had so many different kinds of drugs in my system at the time and copious amounts of vodka. And I called my sister crying and I was like, I relapsed. Of course, this is like a few weeks after I actually had my relapse. And I was crying and her fiance came and picked me up downtown. And I cried the whole way home. And then, oh my God, just so much ridiculousness now that I look back at it. Like I was just such, in my opinion of myself, I was just this pathetic, lost mess.
You know what, though? That was necessary in order to get you to the next place.
Yeah, well, it didn't stop there because I kept trying to be sober, but trying to do it on my own without going. I went to detox a couple of times, and then
check this out, though. That to me is the actual definition of doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Yeah,
time and time again. Yeah. Right? I'll just do coke.
Yeah,
and the result was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get married. The result was the same thing. But you see what I'm saying, right? Yeah. I'll go to detox. Mm-hmm. The result was the same thing, right?
Like, and you know what? I'll be totally honest. I only ever went to detox when I got too sick.
Yeah, well, you have to because you'll die.
Yeah.
Like you'll fucking die.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would go for a few weeks without drinking and then I'd drink only a couple drinks a day for a few weeks after that until it finally turned into all-nighters all day, right? Yeah. Like it was a cycle I kept repeating, except every time I would go on like a week-long bender, it was worse than before. This like right up until, well, then I heard about treatment and I heard about the wait list and I was like, well, then I'm getting fucked up the whole time I'm on this wait list to get into treatment. Like, yeah, I'm going hard and if this is going to be my last time. That was my mentality, right? And I just couldn't seem to not do it because I was avoiding meetings and I was avoiding any sort of communication with anybody. I was a hermit. I was a closet drinker. I would just be drunk all day. And Richard and I still lived in the same house. Obviously, I had no finances. Mm-hmm. And he enabled me. He did provide liquor for me, but if he didn't do it, he knew I was going to find it one way or another, right? And so I put no blame on him for that whatsoever. Right before treatment, I found some people online and long story short, I went and met up with some complete strangers and I was smoking meth and doing GHB, I think GHB shots, coke, drinking, just getting right fucked up to the point I was having seizures and just being left there to seize. Nobody would do anything for me medically except trip out. Yeah. And then I get up and be like, hey, well, I'm having withdrawals now. I need to drink. My phone had died. Like there was no way for my family to get a hold of me. I had no way to I eventually got kicked out of this house at like 7 a.m. I had no money, no phone, no way to get home. I ended up having to, and at this point, withdrawals are hitting me hard. So I remember walking to a mall that was nearby and I was thinking I was going to grab a cab there. Like I could find an ATM and take out money. I don't know. I wasn't all there, right? So I got there and I'm like, oh, it's 7 a.m. There's not going to be cabs at the mall. You know how there usually is during the day? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wasn't thinking. So there was a guy there in a work truck who was on doing something. He was waiting for his crew probably. And I was shaking so bad. And I was like, excuse me, can I use your phone? And I will never forget the look of disgust he had when he looked at me. Like he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to give me his phone, but he obviously knew there was something wrong. He probably could have just been able to tell I was fucking high as fuck. My pupils were huge, right? And then I was so sick I could barely speak. Like it felt like my throat was closing in. Do you get that feeling? Yeah. So it took all my power to just call a cab and get them to come. And then I had to wait for 15 minutes shaking on the curb and then drug my ass into this cab. And I couldn't even give him my address. Like I was getting words out every 2 seconds with huge breaks in between because I felt like I couldn't grasp any air. Like I just remember it was one of the worst withdrawal feelings I had. And then I got home and I had withdrawals all day until finally Richard came home and I went and got some vodka. And I didn't know, I think that was one of my big first experience with meth. Like it wasn't something I smoked that often.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how long I was going to be fucking high. And then plus I had just had a bunch of seizures. So like I was fucked up. Like seizures did a number on me. But I still needed that vodka. And after like 3 or 4 vodka drinks, I felt semi-normal.
Yeah.
And people don't understand like that's the case. I was like, whew, I could finally breathe normal after literally wondering all day if I was going to die in my living room is how I felt. And then I had 3 or 4 vodkas and I was like, whew, okay. And then I was like able to say a full sentence. Like it's crazy the difference.
Yeah.
So then I was completely honest. I was like, yeah, I was smoking meth. This is where I was. This is what happened. And I said to my mom, I told her, I think maybe a week later, I was like, yeah, because I had said, I'm just going to get sober on my own. I don't need to go to treatment. My grandma had offered to pay for treatment, so I was humiliated and I didn't want to owe this money to her. Really what I was doing was coming up with any excuse possible to not go, right? Yeah. And it was in Calgary. And right up until the day I went, I still had excuses, right? Even the whole drive there. I was so close to saying, turn around. But I was like, yeah, no. This is the kicker for me. I was with somebody I met online having seizures, smoking meth, disappeared with no cell phone and not in contact with anybody for days. And then I came home and drank again. Like the next time I go out, I could die while I'm out.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a choice but to get my fucking ass to treatment. Mm-hmm. And then.
So you got to treatment and then what did you learn in treatment?
Well, my biggest almost would be a holdback or my counselor, she pulled me in after about a week or 2 and she told me that she was a little bit concerned about me. And my problem was that I wasn't opening up. So I guess the biggest thing I learned in treatment is I wasn't alone. Obviously, I told you I had that mentality that like I was totally alone. I didn't realize there was this many people out there who understood, and the lack of judgment, because I didn't judge a single person there because obviously I had done so much. I had so much chaos and had done so many fucked up things in my own life that I didn't have room for judgment, right, on anybody else. And then I realized that everybody there felt the same way, including the staff. And that was a big surprise for me. It was like an eye-opener. And I learned that I had no choice. There was no way the healing process would begin if I didn't open up. And even to this day, I have a hard time opening up, like I'm opening up right now. But I mean, just one-on-one with somebody about some other issue. I can't think of an example, but I'm a very guarded person. Mm-hmm. And I learned right away in treatment that I couldn't heal if I was just going to sit there in every group therapy class and not say a word and just listen. And then finally one day I blew up on someone. Mm-hmm. And my counselor actually talked to me later privately and said it was a good thing. Like I had finally, like, yes, okay, I was angry and blew up in that manner instead of giving a positive feedback or instead of crying. Yeah. Mine was, I just exploded. And then after I had my days where I cried, I had my days where I gave feedback. I had days where I just shared stories. But like it took that one first explosion for me to feel like an elephant had been lifted off me. And I was finally like, okay, well, here we go. And to be honest, I would have I would have stayed in treatment longer if I had the money for it, because once I started to feel the process of recovery and going to the meetings and having the guest speakers come in the alumni come in, it was just amazing. And the structure and like, I loved treatment. I loved it. I was actually sad to leave.
Me too. I mean, I like treatment too. I guess the other thing though too about the blow up with your anger, I would suggest is probably because you're very angry going in. Mm-hmm. You're angry for a while, and we don't know how to let that go. What? Any other takeaways from treatment?
I can't think of a specific right now.
And so, what's recovery like today?
Well, you're not supposed to date for a whole year afterwards, but I decided to get knocked up right after I got out of treatment. So I just went like the whole shebang. I didn't just date. Instead, I got pregnant. And that kind of threw things way out of whack for me. Obviously, it's not what I intended to do. It's funny you're talking about going to Nepal with your mom.
Yeah.
What my plan was to go overseas and volunteer at Nepal. I had already been in contact with the agency that does it, and that's what I really wanted to do, was to go volunteer like with an orphanage in Nepal. A 6-week program. I was super excited to do it. It's still on my bucket list. I'll get to it someday. I now have my own baby, so
Yeah.
So I got pregnant, and then came the resentment again, not towards anybody but myself. I was resentment that I was put in that situation of suddenly I was going to be a mom, and that was not my game plan. And but right before I found out I was pregnant, I was on the road to a relapse for sure. I remember maybe 4 weeks afterwards, because it's a whole new world when you get out of treatment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're in this bubble when you're in treatment. Okay,
Yeah, they call it the pink cloud.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was no longer in that pink cloud, and I was back to reality. And about 4 weeks after I got back to Edmonton here, I remember driving. I borrowed my mom's Jeep. I didn't have a vehicle yet at the time. I borrowed my mom's Jeep, and I was sitting outside a liquor store, and I wanted to go in so bad. I was shaking. I wanted to go in there so bad. And then finally I punched the steering wheel. I burst into tears, and I put the vehicle in drive, and I left, and I didn't go in. And then it was a couple weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. And I think my pregnancy saved me from a relapse. It was the one thing that kept me away from a relapse long enough for me to actually start changing and becoming self-aware and acknowledging aspects of my life that I needed to change, and acknowledging that just abstaining wasn't going to be enough for me. I needed to reach out to people who were in recovery. I needed to get rid of all those friends, quote friends, that I used to party with. I needed to change my lifestyle, do an overhaul of my life, right? Instead of just sitting around pouting and being resentful.
Yeah.
And just being pregnant told me that there was not a chance in hell I could drink, right? And I think that if I wasn't, I probably would have relapsed. I can look back at where I was then and realize that for sure. And since then, well, let's see. What's another rule you shouldn't do? Well, quote, rule. Date somebody else who's sober or in recovery. Yeah, well, that's
a shitty thing to do.
Yeah, that was my daughter's dad, right? Oh my God, you want to laugh at me again? We met
in a meeting?
We met in detox.
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something to you that I heard in a meeting that I think will be very valuable to you and maybe the listeners. You put a lot of work into yourself, right? You're kind of a rebuild, right? Right. You're a rebuild.
Yeah.
You know what you do not deserve? Another rebuild. So go get something fucking brand new. See, the reason why addicts...
You're talking about when it comes to
an addict. Yeah. An addict is a rebuild.
Yeah,
you don't need a rebuilt motor.
No.
Go buy a brand new fucking shiny one. You did your work or doing your work.
Yeah, doing. Yeah.
So
still doing.
Don't go and settle for something that's like you.
Yeah,
Get
I know.
better.
Get better. Yeah.
Right? Because this is the reason. So I've dated addicts as well in recovery.
Yeah.
One girl who had fucking 12 years that really didn't have 12 years. And another person who I was trying to save. There's a couple of those.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Early recovery. And that seemed to happen at every point when I didn't want to look at myself anymore. Or I decided I need to be on a pedestal and be like, hey, you want to know how to save your life? This is how you save your life. Okay?
Yeah.
So that would happen, and that was not good. But my last relationship with an addict, what I recognized is I don't want to date an addict. You know why? Because we don't trust each other enough in order to know that we're running our own program the way that we see fit for ourselves, and we're in check with our sponsors. So we're constantly nitpicking at each other, saying or doing, and I see this in a lot of recovery, actually not so many that are successful. Anyways, I'll just finish with this, is saying that we would nitpick and be like, you should go to a meeting, or your dates become going to meetings, and then and then it's like, and then that kind of bullshit, right? Yeah. Like that's not normal. And so and then you start saying to each other, giving each other air quotes suggestions about what they should do with their recovery.
Really, you're just fucking telling them what to do.
Kind of. I mean, I give suggestions all the time, and I really mean it in a suggestive way now. With my partner, I didn't. Or I would compare her to another woman in recovery and be like,
ouch,
this person does all this stuff. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Like, look at your recovery.
Yeah.
What kind of fucking dick am I?
Right.
Right. Yeah. So now, I mean, I don't date. My partner's not in recovery. Yeah. And so our life, I mean, she's a normie. I mean, she can drink a beer. Doesn't bother me. Like, that stuff doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And she's a normal person. She knows a lot about addiction, but what she doesn't really know is, so she actually came and did a big book study to quit smoking. Mm-hmm. So she understands the steps and context of that and has never smoked again, but she doesn't go to meetings. She doesn't need to understand meetings.
Right.
She understands addiction in the context of tobacco and nicotine and cigarettes. Yeah. She doesn't understand my addiction. She doesn't understand why I need to go to Nooners. And I, because of my schedule, usually don't go to meetings when I can spend time with her.
Yeah.
I go to Nooners. I do what I do whenever I do it. Right. And I'm very nomadic about it now. Whereas before, I needed a set schedule. Mm-hmm. I needed that accountability to people in the room. You know, I needed to learn that. And now it's not quite like that anymore. And so, yeah, dating another fucked up person it's not in your best interest. No, you're worth you're better than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, with me and my daughter's dad, that's totally how it was. We were going to meetings, and at the time my mentality was I needed to be with somebody who understood what I went through, and I also had the mentality that nobody else would quite understand me or want somebody as fucked up as I felt like I was, or nobody would want to have me with as fucked up of a past as I have, except somebody else who has a fucked up past too, right? And that's how I felt. And anyways, our relationship did not work. And I don't know, I was 4 months pregnant when I was first left alone, and it was due to a relapse on his part. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. There's been more than one relapse on his part. There has been more than enough anger and resentment from me towards him. That has now subsided. I have detached myself from his sobriety. I don't look at it as my responsibility anymore. And having a daughter with him made it that much more difficult for me to do, because I was up until just a few months ago, I felt like it was my responsibility to keep him sober for her. Yeah. Right? For my daughter.
Yeah.
And I felt like a fuck up. Like, why the fuck did I give her two fucking alcoholic parents, right?
So what's your reoccurring recovery today? Like, what do you do for maintenance today?
I do a lot of self-help books, like reading. Actually, you know what? In the last, I'd probably say month and a half, I haven't done much towards recovery except trying to grow by making my life busier, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do.
No, I'm shaking my head no, people.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of that. I totally am. I have gone to a couple of meetings, 3, 4 now, which I should be going to more.
So
my biggest problem is my schedule.
Let's put you on the spot.
Yeah.
If I were to tell you, if you were to invest 3 days with me, and I'll clear my schedule for 3 days. If you invest 3 days with me and an hour a week, your life would significantly change. Would you be willing to give that investment for your life and your daughter and everything that's about to come to you in the future? Because I'll put it to you this way. So somebody I know just recently had an addict in their life. Mm-hmm. And this person was relapsing a lot, and there was some serious issue around it. And they were financially insolvent almost because of their mortgage, and they needed a new roommate. Okay. And I said to this person, I said, you know what? You're not going to find another roommate until you get rid of the old one that's an addict.
Yes.
It's just not going to happen. That's the way how God or odd, that's how I understand it to work. Finally, what this person did was they bought this person a plane ticket to Vancouver because that's where this person wanted to go. They sent them to Vancouver. The next day, she got a $50,000 tenant.
Oh, wow.
coming in.
There you go.
So if you want to know why walls happen, it's because we haven't finished what's on our plate. Mm-hmm. And God, air quotes, higher power, whatever you want to call it, in my opinion, will never give you more than what you can handle. Mm-hmm. And you already have too much to handle. Mm. And so there needs to be a set of tools in order to help us deal with those things without getting piled up. Because as you were saying, I'm getting busy, I'm getting,
yeah, I'm extremely busy right now. And I even am aware that because of and everything is going fantastic in my life right now. I am not an angry, resentful person like I once was, but it's all, okay, this is the way I look at it from what I've learned from you and from this podcast whenever in regards to recovery is the process that's happening with me right now, the letting go of resentments, and would be sped up by probably like 50 if I did a set of steps or I did a study.
Let me put it to you this way. This is what my sponsor used to tell me my first one, not Larry, my first one in the meeting. He'd say, life's good right now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great, right? Guess what? It's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get worse than you've ever known in your life. And then it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get better than you've ever known in your life, just like it is right now.
Yeah.
But it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. You need to learn how to do things when it's good and practice it when it's good. Those coping mechanisms that we have to have so that when it gets bad, it's just nature. It's not second nature anymore. It's fucking nature. Right? Because before... And I hate doing this dare to compare thing, but I think sometimes it's necessary. Before, when shit went sideways, it was like, fucking, I'm drinking.
Yeah.
It's that bad, right?
Yeah.
Because we can make anything that bad.
Yeah.
Now, my first initial thought is, it's going to pass.
Yeah.
It's never as bad as it.
No,
but
see, I'm
it took years and years to practice that.
I feel like for the most part, I have reached that. Well, I certainly don't think I'm going to drink anymore. But... even when my daughter was diagnosed with her heart condition 6 months ago.
So this is the segue into shitty positions in active recovery.
Yeah. When she was diagnosed, I was not once, and I didn't realize this until later, but not once did I think about wanting a drink. But then a part of me wonders, is it just because she is so dependent on me right now?
Right? Well, this is the other story and that we hear quite often is people who are like, well, I retired and the slippers came on and so did the bottle. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to be just as bad then too.
Yeah.
Because this is the other thing is I've recognized if I'm not going to meetings, even with the amount of sobriety I have, I will sometimes go and I'll think to myself and I'll go, maybe I could have a drink. Mm-hmm. No, I can't. Mm-hmm. Like right away. And this is years of practicing like the principles of the steps in my daily affairs, right? So it's not our disease is cunning. It's very, very cunning, and it's very, very subtle, right? And you have to be very vigilant, and you can't lose that vigilance against that addiction because my disease tells me I don't have one.
Oh yeah,
right,
for sure.
And I'm the one who has to keep reinforcing, you do have a problem. It will never be, ever, anything close to normal. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
Right? And this is why I say, in good times, this is where we need to practice more so than not. Because good times sometimes have more negative consequences to us than bad times do. Mm-hmm. Because we drop so fucking dramatic.
Yes.
And because there's no stability within our emotions and we don't have those anchors, this is where we get into serious, serious trouble. Mm-hmm. Like I can tell you just a little while ago, I found some serious treachery within my personal life. Mm-hmm. Somebody that was really close to me. And fucked up a major business deal that I was working on for the last 3 years of my life. And first person I called, Larry.
Yeah.
First thing I did, went to a meeting. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't go to a physical, I actually went to an online meeting. So I was sitting in my house on my phone
I've done some of those.
in a meeting.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the things that I go to right away. And I know that if I'm feeling that shitty about my position, well, now I'm self-wallowing. That's where awareness. So the big book told me this as well. Self-awareness is great, but it's not the reprieve that'll keep you from your drink. And that's a stark remark coming out of a bunch of alcoholics who've been trying to get sober for a long time, right? Like self-knowledge is like the bullshit. It's not bullshit, but it's the shit when they say, you biochemically don't digest alcohol and drugs like a normal person. Right? That's self-awareness, and it's real and it's true. And self-awareness is like, I wallow. Yeah, okay. What is the action after you are aware? Right? That's the key. Because when you and I are aware of something, that's great. What are you going to do about it now?
That's the hard part. That's the part that matters.
And so the biggest thing is if you find a set of something that's like a formula, and it's like, fuck it, I'm going to jump in faith and see if this thing works. And you'll find people who have a longer recovery time, like good recovery time, people who are still happy with life and not so miserable. What you're going to find is they're able to utilize the set of steps, the formula that they found in that with the guidance of their sponsor, and use that every time without even second guessing it. Because when they did it the first time, we all second guessed it. Like, fuck you, this works? Yeah, I'm telling you it works. Like, seriously, just trust me once. Trust me maybe 2 or 3 more times after this. It's going to work. It's not going to fail you. And that's the hardest, air quotes, sale that you're trying to tell someone. I'm not here for your benefit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here to benefit myself really working with you.
Yeah.
I'm not here for you. As much as I'm like telling you I am, I'm here because I'm here to save my life as well. And that's, I think, anytime shitty situation has happened in recovery, that's what saved me. Like I was homeless getting out of that halfway house. Nowhere to fucking go. And this guy from prison that I knew was like, yo, you want 2 weeks? I'll give you 2 weeks for free. Just get your shit together and then find a place in 2 weeks and move out. And I did. Right? And that was the meetings. First thing I do whenever I move into a new house, I go to a meeting every day for that week because the meeting is my house.
Oh, okay.
And that gives me stability and an anchor.
Yeah.
The place I just moved into is totally unfamiliar to me.
It's totally foreign.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
But you know what I do? I know that meeting. I know that place. I know those people. And for addicts, what I've come to understand, and this may be just me or maybe some other people that are listening, is when there's significant changes in my life, that's when I'm most susceptible to fucking shit up. Like a new job, a new house, a new car, a new whatever, new cell phone, those kinds of things. Fuck with your head.
Yeah.
And there becomes maybe a potential piece of egoism that is attached to that.
Yeah.
And then you go to a meeting to deflate it, saying I'm just as normal as these fucking sickos are.
Yeah.
Right? And then you recognize that you're not this thing, this elitist or this pedestal fucking whatever.
Oh man, do I ever have people in my life that put me on a pedestal? And it drives me fucking nuts.
And so the biggest thing in that case, you got to go to meetings because those people.
And I tell them to stop putting me on a pedestal because.
Yeah, but they're aspiring to be.
Yes.
So even like in meetings, like I'll go to meetings and I did this with my sponsor where I was like, oh, you're the best guy ever, blah blah blah, and I'd put him on that pedestal to a degree, and then what I recognized was. He's told me how to get what he's got. Right. It's up to me to go and get what he's got. He's no more than me. We're all the same here. We're all infallible. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fuck things up. And he's made mistakes in front of me, and I've made mistakes in front of him. And we don't kick it. Like I said, we don't kick the wounded. But your relapse means that your credibility is for shit. And that's one thing I've never fucked up. And I'm proud to be a first-time kicker.
Yeah.
There's not many of us in any fellowship that are, and I've had people come up to me and say, well, you're not really an addict if you're a first-time kicker.
Oh, fuck off.
Well, and then but then there's a piece, especially when you're in early recovery, in the back of your head, and you're kind of like, well, fuck you. You want me to show you what kind of addict I am?
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah.
Right? Because there's that fuck you-ness that we have as addicts. It's a characteristic that we have.
Yeah.
And so that was really difficult to say, you know, I have nothing to prove to you. I mean, I know where I came from as an addict. I know how many times I tried my own way. I'm just fortunate I came in once to a 12-step program and never left.
Yeah.
Liked it. Came home. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Right? I did not feel alone anymore being in this fucking room. Right? That's the reason when you were saying I had no identity when you left the detox.
No, I didn't have a
That's
fucking
why
clue.
recovery needs to become your identity in the beginning.
Yeah.
It has to be because you don't have anything else.
Well, one meeting I went to right out of that detox. Now we're way going back, but whatever. There was a guy there who I told everybody there I was a week sober, and there was one guy there who had 14 years. Was it 14? Yeah, something like that. And another one who had like 3, another one who had 8 months, another one who had 5 years, whatever. And the one thing that they said to me is they told me my cravings would never go away. And this was a guy who's 14 years sober telling me that he still has to go. His key to it was eating candy. I totally took this as advice. Eating candy and having a nap, and that was how he got through his cravings. And I remember being a 1 week sober thinking I have to deal with cravings for the rest of my fucking life, and I was like totally horrified by that thought, and I went and bought a whole ton of candy.
So I'll tell you what, since my set of steps, I have not had an obsession to use again. Never. I'm not going to say I haven't had a thought. But I have never had an obsession. An obsession is completely different than a craving. A craving means you allowed the obsession has happened. Okay? Craving means there's no coming back. An obsession is before a craving. So let's talk about, for a quick second here so that we can have a real clear, crystal clear understanding. A goal, what is a goal? A goal is something that you work to achieve.
Yes.
What's an obsession? Something that you cannot stop thinking about.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So when you were younger and you wanted, what was the biggest thing you ever wanted when you were a kid? Like you just wanted as a possession? Doll?
I don't know.
Car?
One of those motorized cars.
Okay. And did you get one?
No.
Okay. Give me something that you wanted and you got. Whether you got it or whatever.
How about you use an example? Because I can't think of one.
So let's say you want a car. You go to the dealership. You know what the leather smells like. You know what it looks like. Middle of the night, you toss and turn. You think about how much it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
How you're
That's
saving this money. That's obsessing.
Yeah.
That's not goal seeking. Goal seeking, you look at something for 5-10 minutes and then you move on knowing that you're going towards that goal.
Okay.
The other way is obsessive thinking. That's how you thought about alcohol. Every minute of every day, of every second, it was happening. Now, if you allow that obsession to happen for 5 minutes, how long do you think it's going to take for it to become 10 minutes? And then how long do you think it's going to take for it to become 20, then 30, then 40? Because see, our disease is cunning.
Yeah. Well, that's like that day that I sat in the Jeep out front of a liquor store because I had been thinking about how I was going to get a vehicle and get to a liquor store for days. I could taste the liquor.
So now think of it this way as well. If you were obsessing about anything in your life, how quick is that brain pathology ready to take on addiction?
Pretty ready.
So why is it so bad for us to be in obsessive thinking? It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's horrible for us.
Complete control.
So how much do you have to change to become goal orientated and practice goal seeking as opposed to obsessive thinking? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Because it's kind of like telling an obese person, you can still eat, but you can't eat as much as you're eating. Well, you and I, that doesn't work for our alcohol or our drug use.
No.
It's complete abstinence. But somebody who has the same addictive personality as us, as an obese person, still has to eat.
Yeah.
See that? Okay? So we're talking about the same thing with our obsessive thinking and our goal seeking. Goal seeking is very, very close to obsessing. The difference is there is a black and white line there, and you're the one who has to acknowledge the steps that you're taking in order to get to that goal. The difference between obsessing and goal seeking is obsessing is like, boom, you've got it.
Yeah.
Goal seeking means you're getting ever so closer to getting there, and it's comfortable and it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. The other thing is too with obsessing, you'll notice when you get that car that you knew what the leather smelled like, you knew what it was like inside, you knew what the lights were going to be, you knew everything about it, and you spend 2 a.m. looking at that fucking car.
Yeah.
Right? When you bought it, you were over it in 15 seconds.
Totally over it. Yeah.
See that? That's how that is obsessive. Mm-hmm. When you have a goal on something, for a long period of time afterwards, you'll talk about it. And not so much proud, but you're more respectful of what you've done.
Yeah, respectful is a good word.
Right?
Yeah.
So you respect yourself because of achieving that. Mm-hmm. Right? A huge difference. Huge difference. And these are the subtle foes that we have to really acknowledge in our early recovery.
Yeah.
Like you have to be very cautious about this stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that sponsors will give you.
Yeah.
You know, this is why it's important. Like I said, if you invest one hour a week into a meeting and you invest 3 days prior to that meeting and come back to big book studies every once in a while to read and stuff, your life will significantly change. What you think is great now will be 1,000 times better. I promise you that. If you think it's good now, you've got quite a gift. But you come and do this kind of work and you'll never be the same. I've said this to everybody, even this person, like my partner who came and did a big book study for the steps. I said to her, you do this and you do this honestly, you will never be the same again.
Yeah. And
she will even tell you she's never been the same again since doing it, for the better. Mm-hmm. Because it's that mind-blowing. Like it's that crazy how deep it is and how quick the Band-Aid comes off. And once that Band-Aid's off, there's no need for resentment or nothing or anything again in your life. And it's a real conclusion. It's not just, I'm not thinking about it right now. It's really gone. It's done. Mm-hmm. It's done. And you never have to go back to it again. So you let me know when you're ready and we'll figure that out. Because I think that'd be a good episode too for us to do in the future where we talk about the results.
Sure. Yeah. I have to be kid free, I'm assuming.
For the big book study would be nice. Yeah.
Okay.
For 3 days. You can bring kids to meetings though in our area.
Yeah, and that was totally news to me.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. What's the biggest, shittiest situation you were ever in active recovery that you kind of got through?
When I was alone and pregnant and I was self-employed, realizing that I had been 100% relying on the hope that I would remain with my unborn child's father and he would support us financially. I realized that I didn't have anything paid into EI, so that meant when I closed my day home that I wasn't going to have any source of income. And I was...
EI's employment insurance.
Yes. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And I was living in this beautiful house that was 2 years old. It was 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. It was just me. I was running a day home. I was happy and pregnant. And then suddenly I was alone and thinking, what the fuck? And I knew at that point I didn't want to let him back into the picture for financial reasons. I knew I had to be strong and not let something that was potentially toxic into my life, and I had to find a new solution. So I immediately put myself on a waiting list for affordable housing, and I obviously was doing my best to make money and save money in any rational way possible, just to prepare. And I instantly started getting baby stuff together, and I'm talking 5 months early, right? Just to prepare in any way I possibly could. And it did end up coming down to it, though, when my daughter was born, I lived with him, with her dad. And that was just not for financial reasons. It's obviously because I needed, or I hoped they would have a bond. And in order for that to happen in an easy way and to be easier on my nerves was for the three of us to be under the same roof when she was a newborn baby. That ended up being a very, very toxic relationship between him and I needed out immediately. And I ended up getting housing right when I needed it the most. Except I have talked about how I went downtown and I was like, I have a brand new baby. She was born early. I still don't have a house. I need somewhere to live. Because at this point, I was being offered my sister's couch. I was being offered one of my friend's couches just to get her and I out of that situation because it was not good. There was a lot of... He had a very bad temper. We'll just say that. And I needed out of that situation. And then I felt defeated. When I went to the housing place to be like, hey, what's going on? Give me a status. And they're like, oh, well, we don't know where your application is. It says we received it. We don't know. We don't know where you are on the wait list. We don't know where your application is. So you have to start over, essentially is what I was being told. Whatever reason, it was like a month later, then suddenly I got a phone call and said, there's a place that you could potentially rent. Do you want to come see it? And I said yes. And that was that. Moved in. It was a very tough conversation to have, though, because I felt like I was, like when I told her dad that I was moving out, for some reason I still felt obligated to take care of his feelings. I didn't want to hurt his feelings by telling him that we were moving out, even though it seemed like a very obvious situation. Very obvious situation. I feel like he should have seen it coming a mile away, but I think he was in denial because he said that he didn't. He was caught off guard. I don't know how, because we didn't even share a room. We didn't even speak to each other unless it was to have a dispute of some sort or who's going to do the bath tonight for our newborn child, right? Like there wasn't a healthy relationship there whatsoever.
I think when you're in that level of addiction, that's just how deep denial is in everything in your life. Like you could be standing there with track marks on your body going, well, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah, no, you're that bad. Just like when you were standing there asking that guy for the cell phone. You didn't think you looked that bad.
No.
And he's looking at you like, what the fuck? Like you just got fucking blindsided sideways. Like you just got hit sideways. Yeah. You know, like you look fucked. Man.
Yeah. Like, you know, when there's, well, I'll just use like her example here in the city when there's people who are very obviously high on the streets and you can see people looking at them. I realize now I was that person in that scenario. Yeah. And I didn't think it at the time.
I think one of the shittier situations I was definitely in early recovery was having to go to welfare to get them to pay for my treatment. I didn't know that was an option. And well, the kicker was I was so ready to put my dignity at the door. That's how I felt was going to happen. Because that's typically what it is in Canada when you're asking for social assistance. And then what it ended up happening was I went with a CTT worker, which was Correctional Transitions Team.
Okay.
And they helped us out of jail get to treatment. And then what ended up happening from there was he actually walked with me he went in with me to welfare or social assistance here. That changed the entire tone. Because it was somebody actually advocating that I'm ready to go to treatment.
Right.
And then this guy looked at me, he goes, and I mean, I was an engineer and a drug dealer, all that bullshit before, right? Of course, I didn't tell him I was a drug dealer. He knew I was out on bail, the social worker, but he knew that I was a working guy. So that really helped me too. And he said, look, have you ever been on assistance before? I said, no. He goes, look it, I'm going to give you everything I possibly could. And I walked out with $1,800 that day. And that was like $1,200 towards my treatment, and then the rest went to my first place. Like that halfway house after I left. I didn't spend anything, and that was all the change in the world. Another thing too, I've said this before on the show. I got that career job. And I called my sponsor, my first sponsor, and he's like, well, congratulations for fucking up. I was like, what? He basically said to me, he goes, just because you're in recovery doesn't mean you don't know if you're a fuck up or not. You have to prove that to yourself.
Yeah.
You should have went and got a volunteer job. You're not ready for this bullshit. And he was fucking totally right.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't lose. I got laid off because I asked for the layoff because of economic downturn here in Edmonton. But he was right. My employer was really good too. I could call and I'd be like, look at man, I'm not feeling it today. I need to go to meetings today. Okay. And they just let me go. Right. I was very, very fortunate. But I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I really was not ready for that level or that magnitude because if I fucked up, I was like fucking up probably my last chance at my career job. It's probably better
a lot of pressure.
Well, and it's better to fuck up at a Dollarama than it is at a career job. Right. Or sure. McDonald's or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's a jack off job. It doesn't matter. So, word from the wise, if you're in early recovery, I would strongly suggest that that's what you do.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're 2 hours in.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to kill this show like this episode.
You just got to know a lot.
Yeah, we'll continue on next week. So where can they find our blog, Chelsey?
www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com.
What's your Instagram?
Chelsey_lifeonlifesterms.
And what's the Twitter?
Chelsey Kapler. Chelsey with a Y.
Mine is Life on Life's Terms, I think, for Twitter. And then Life on Life's Terms podcast for Instagram. And there's the Life on Life's Terms Facebook page, which is always awesome. That's where the most relevant stuff comes out.
Oh, for sure. Check it out. If you haven't liked that page, like it.
And then we also just got back up on minds.com. So hopefully we're going to try to transition our stuff from Facebook over onto Minds. So you can check us out on minds.com. That's Life on Life's Terms podcast.minds.com. Have a beautiful Friday, guys. Talk to you soon. And go read Chelsey's blog.
Bye.